Hello again, and welcome to the North Texas Learning Podcast Curve. I'm your co-host Tapaswini. This podcast is all about things related to the educational research in North Texas region. Especially, we try to help connect all these doing research in education, and we all connect researchers and practitioners. So practitioners know more about what research is going on, and researchers get insights in what's going on in the schools. So this is our third podcast of the Learning Curve, and today we have our special guest, Dr. Keller. Dr. Keller is a professor in University of North Texas Department of Kinesiology and Health Promotion. Previously, she was the interim vice president for community engagement at UNT. So she knows a lot about our community. Not to mention that she served as a dean of UNT's College of Education for 15 years. So before we speak with Dr. Keller, I would like to bring in our co-host of the podcast, Dr. Darrell.
Hi, Tapaswini, and it's good to be here. We've been off for a little bit of a break.
It's been a minute since we met.
Yeah, we had spring break and we had mid-semester exam. Although I didn't do mid-semester exam, I'm teaching two 8-week term sessions this semester, so I had to wrap up with grades, and now we're back. So how has your semester been so far?
So it's been a busy semester.
It's your first semester, right?
Yes. I'm trying to pick up things with all those courses I'm taking up. So between the coursework, research, and my work with Office of Research Consultant.
Doing these podcasts.
Yes, and trying to help with grading and all, and trying to help with the ORC website.
Yeah.
So, but it's been exciting. I have been learning so much, especially about how research can be applied in real-world educational settings. Working on the ORC website, it's been good so far.
That's good. And you've developed a lot of new colleagues along the way.
Yes.
I mean, you have some good, strong colleagues, I think, in the Office of Research Consulting.
Yes, it's been good working with all of them. It's fun.
That's good. That's great.
So how's the Trend Network coming along? For those that aren't familiar, we also have some new researchers and practitioners called TREND, which stands for Texas Research Evaluation Network for Development.
Yeah, so our Trend Network it's slowly but surely moving along. We just started it back in the fall of 24. Our last meeting we held on, what was it, April 6th? No, we had our last meeting first Wednesday in March.
Yes.
And we had Cassandra Hatfield, who is a member of the Board of Trustees at Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD, but she also is responsible for recruitment for three large randomized controlled trial studies that are funded at SMU through the U.S. Department of Education. So she works in math education. So we got a chance to hear about those. It's called Project Scale Up for Fraction Face-Off. It was a fascinating meeting. I'll kind of recap it just briefly for folks, but it was a fascinating meeting because we got to hear about the details of participant recruitment in randomized trial studies. And randomized trial studies are so hard to do in education mostly because of convincing schools of the need, for causal evidence. And she was able to speak directly to that. That's one of the biggest challenges they have with those RCT studies. So I thought it was fascinating anyway. But let me tell people a little bit about Trend, and if you've heard our other podcasts, I always kind of push this issue, but one of the things that we tend to lack, at least in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, we've got 50 some odd school districts in this region, and the relationships that researchers have with educational practitioners is lacking, in my view. We need stronger relationships where we can work with school districts to try to help them better understand the kinds of programs that they're putting in place and how well they work. I think the ones that I've spoken to always have questions about that and how to better understand that. And if we can take the two groups and try to help them develop these connections, that's what we want to do, and that's why we have these monthly meetings. as just an opportunity for people to get together, meet one another, talk about what their interests are, and maybe we'll get a collaboration or two that strikes up over time. So, yeah, that's what we're doing.
So let's get it straight to Dr. Keller. Dr. Keller, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank you and Dr. Hall for having me today. It's delightful to be here, and I look forward to our conversation together.
Well, I want to point out, before we get too far into this conversation, that Jean's tenure here at UNT far exceeds my own. I don't know, maybe that's not a fair statement, but in fact, Jean, I don't know if you remember, but you were the one who hired me back in 2007 when you were dean.
Indeed, I do. We made some great hires over the years. And yes, I've been at UNT for a little over 35 years, so it's been a wonderful opportunity to have UNT as home for my educational career.
Well, what is it? I've always wondered the story about, because it happened before I got here. How is it that you came to be here? Tell folks a little bit about the story behind how you arrived and ended up at UNT and became the dean at the College of Education.
Well, Darrell, it's kind of a little bit of a personal story. When I was at the University of Georgia, I had been there for almost 10 years. I was the department chair there. And my brother and his wife had a little boy. And I do not have a big extended family. So my mother and sister and I said, we ought to try to be together. And they lived in the Dallas area. And I had a former colleague that worked at UNT, and I really didn't know exactly where UNT was at the time. And so I called her and said, hey, what are some of the places in this area where I might work? And she said, Jean, we have an opening. So I joined the faculty at UNT and in the Department of Kinesiology, Health Promotion, Recreation. And then I think some folks over the years saw that I had a little bit of leadership skills and worked in the department and then came to the college as associate dean and then actually became the dean of the College of Education.
So you came in as associate dean?
I came in as associate dean, yeah.
All right. And your research up to that point was in what area? Tell us a little bit about your research.
A little bit in health, particularly with individuals with varying abilities, both in the cognitive areas as well as physical abilities.
In health, and so can you expand on that a little bit more specifically what you mean by health?
Health, their ability to kind of live active lifestyles. Meaning that they would kind of engage in recreation activities, they'll engage in physical activities just to keep them healthy. And we learned that that is not only just good for physical health, but social, emotional, and cognitive health.
That explains why I see your name on a paver down there at Southridge Park.
Yes.
Because you support parks and recreation, right?
I do.
Okay.
I'm on the Park Foundation Board.
Okay, all right. What have been some of the biggest changes at UNT since in the 35 years, or at least while you were a dean?
Sure.
What are some of the biggest changes you think you've seen?
Well, I think we've certainly seen growth in our enrollment. So when I came, we were about 18,000 students, and today we're approaching 50,000 students. So that's amazing. So we've seen growth in our student body, and along that same way, the good news is we've seen growth in our faculty. We've hired different types of faculty, both professional faculty and tenure track faculty, and that's something that was kind of new to me and something that we learned and grew from and saw the benefits from doing so. And then, of course, our physical plant. We've many new dorms and cafeterias. We've got many new buildings for our teaching, our research. We've seen some nice renovations here in the library. So those are some of the things that we've seen. And of course, we have chosen to be an R1 research university, which we were not. We were a regional campus, really heavily focused on the education of students to go into the workforce and do good things. And we've sort of come full circle.
Yeah.
We are now focusing more on making sure our students are ready to go into the workforce.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the growth pains every day as I try to drive to campus through the war zone they call road construction.
Road construction, yes, the infrastructure, all of the sewage and everything that goes along with that. Yep.
Well, you're right. Things certainly have changed, I guess, since you came to UNT. If our enrollment has gone from 18,000 to over 45 for sure,
Over
right?
45,
yeah. And that's pretty quick growth. And then, you also mentioned our R1 status.
Yes.
And so, what, in your view, have been the kind of the biggest changes to research in the college since you came to UNT? Or perhaps what kind of changes are you most proud of that you've seen happen?
Well, one of the things, Darrell, that has been really exciting for us in the College of Education, we had quite a bit of research and service projects going on. Both things that looked at kind of the integrity of some of the work and the efficacy of some of our practices in education, as well as more applied research and service projects. So some of those have continued, and then some of those have kind of developed into other types of research. At the time when I came, we did not have a College of Engineering.
Right.
And so we've seen some huge growth in the research structure in our College of Engineering, and that, of course, has kind of pushed us more towards that R1. One of the things that the College of Education always did was to work with the other colleges when I was dean. We felt that it was imperative to have wonderful music teachers. So
Yeah.
we partnered with our outstanding music school and our college, and then the same thing with our visual arts. We worked very closely with math and science because we needed good math and science educators along with language and literacy educators. So we partnered with every one of the schools and colleges at UNT. And that's something that I think is so important for a College of Education to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I work pretty regularly with people over in engineering because I have a STEM background. And I'm really grateful for the opportunities to work collaboratively with them on National Science Foundation projects and so on. So I don't think we do it nearly enough. I think, we could probably do more of that.
I would definitely agree, Darrell.
Yeah. Let's see, there was something else you mentioned. Oh, I can't think of it at the moment. All right, let's see. Let's see. Now, I know I mentioned this briefly a minute ago about Southridge Park, but and I don't know if you know this, but I only live about a block away from you in Southridge.
We are neighbors in more ways than one.
But given your experience with community, you're a longtime Dentonite. I think that's the term, and you've got a reputation as a community leader.
Yeah. So, Dr. Keller, I'm curious to know what you think about the community relations and engagement here in Denton, or maybe the nearby DFW area, because UNT is a regional research university. What are some important things you think we should be doing to engage into the local community here in Denton or DFW?
I think that, again, the university should be well integrated into the community it serves. And Tapaswini, you mentioned the Denton community, but you also mentioned the Dallas-Fort Worth region that we service so well. So I think we have a wonderful opportunity to make sure that we bring our knowledge, our research, our skills, our students, and our faculty to engage with those communities on a regular basis. And I think that's one of the things that I think is one of the most important things that universities can and should do.
Yeah, I want you to, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about this initiative that you've been involved in called the North Texas Regional P16 Council. you had emailed me about this several months ago, and I think we'll put the link to the council's website here in the podcast video below. But I had an opportunity to read more about the council, but what is it that inspired the creation of this North Texas Regional P16 Council, and what specific challenges was it really designed to address?
Well, thanks for asking, Darrell. The council is something that I am proud of, and I think the university should be proud of it. This was an initiative in the kind of late 80s, early 90s. And at the time, President Dr. Al Hurley and I kind of came together and said, look, we're the University of North Texas. We should create the North Texas Regional P16 Council. And it was designed to promote communications, networking, and collaboration opportunities. And it embraced multiple perspectives, including all levels of education, along with families, businesses, and workforce systems, faith-based groups, local, state, and federal agencies, and philanthropic and community organizations. And its kind of singular purpose was to advance education for all students and to close gaps in education, especially around academic access and success. And what we were really leading students to is to be employable citizens and educated citizens who could make informed decisions. So that's what we were really working on over the years, and we focused on this North Texas region, which again, because the region is so large, we did have to kind of narrow our focus, and we looked at Collin, Dallas, Denton, and Tarrant counties.
Okay. Yeah, well, it sounds like both of our organizations have similar scope in terms
Yes.
of region. Slightly different purposes, and then
Yes.
we work with researchers and educational practitioners to make those connections, but the organizations we deal with are largely the same.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So is the membership council open to everyone, or who are the members involved in the council?
The members that are enrolled in the council are diverse in the sense that it's K through 12. So we attempt to have large K through 12 schools, so Dallas and Fort Worth, okay? We then kind of look for mid-size schools. That might be the scope of like Darrell, Denton, Carrollton, that sort of thing. And interestingly enough, in this area, we have rural schools. So we
Right.
try to make sure the rural schools are represented.
Sanger, ISD, places like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and
Dallas.
and some of them are quite small.
Right.
When you look at the number of students they serve and, the scope of like their curricula within high schools compared to a scope of something like Fort Worth ISD. Then we've also tried to make sure that we've included our two-year partners. Our two-year colleges in this region are very, very large. Collin Community, Tarrant, and Dallas. The same thing with North Central Texas. So those are all members of our council. We generally work with the chancellor or the president and ask them to help us select the member that will serve on the council.
I see.
And then it liaisons back to their executive committee. So sometimes we might be working a little bit more with academics. Other times we might be working with enrollment. Other times maybe student affairs or student success. What's making students be successful in continuing their education and matriculating through and then graduating.
Mhm.
And then, again, because it's so important that as we think about the student's future, that they're involved with the workforce, whether that might be through apprenticeships, internships, or then finally getting their first job in the field. So we definitely have kind of worked with the Texas Workforce Commission, as well as some of the larger industries here in the Denton, Fort Worth, Dallas area.
Okay, great. Sounds pretty comprehensive.
It is a pretty comprehensive organization, and because we always need some funding, we've reached out to our state partners, like the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, Texas Education Agency, and then some of the philanthropic groups like the Meadows Foundation, and they have funded some of our work over the years.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yes.
About how many members would you say you have?
At our kind of peak, we generally had about 100 members.
Okay.
And what we're doing
That's
right
fantastic.
now is trying to kind of relook at the changes within our region, the changes within the scope of our work and how we do our work, and then kind of reconstruct how we'll form new members and reorganize and kind of just envision the organization.
Gotcha. So highlight for us now some of the council's most impactful initiatives in your view. What do you think those are?
Well, we worked very closely with some research efforts, and Darrell, that's why I reached out to you very early on with our gap analysis. We were collecting data on our K through 12 students, but that was totally separate and a total separate entity from our higher ed students, right? So we had two different state organizations collecting two different sets of data.
Right.
And those data didn't align too well at all.
Sure. Yeah.
So over the years, we conducted gap analysis, looking at, well, how a student performed on some of the measures in math and science, in their reading and writing skills, in their college readiness, and then if they transferred to a two-year institution, how they performed at that two-year institution, and then how they may have performed and then transferred from a 2 to a 4-year institution and then into the workforce. So those were some of our research projects, and it actually stimulated the two agencies, the Texas Education Agency and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, to work together. So now they actually do some of the work that we did initially to create some of the data for our entire state. We were just doing it for the North Texas region.
Okay. Well, if you're ever interested, I have a new methodological technique
All
for
right.
you guys to think about. It's something that I learned in my work with the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank, where we were interested in the trajectories of students, sort of like what you're interested in here, but we used what's called a tracer study technique, where we take a group of graduates, a representative sample of graduates, and we ask them to trace back what their histories were as they transitioned through historically. And the trickiest part of this approach, methodologically, was trying to recruit all of these people to come together. Well, since they all graduated from the same institution, we would hold a reunion party. I call it the reunion party technique.
Excellent, excellent. I love the
We have
idea.
them come to reunion, and we ask them questions when they show up to the reunion about where they went to school and their transition into the institution where they graduated.
That's phenomenal.
So Tapaswini's about to be involved with this project. She doesn't even know it because she asked last week for a research study to work on, and so that's the next one that's coming up. But
Well,
anyway,
won We would love to be a
We're
part
gonna-
of this.
we want to work on the methodology part and try to sort that out. But anyway, that's a new paper that we're working on. So let's see. So how has the council sort of influenced collaboration, do you think, between school districts, higher ed, and the workforce organizations? What kind of impact have you had so far?
Well, I think we've had several areas of impact. We've certainly looked at some of the successes and some of the things that have not been so successful. For example, we had seen that our students were doing okay and graduating in math and science, but they weren't going into math and science careers. And then oftentimes when they came to higher education, they would need to take, an advanced math class like calculus, and they weren't prepared. Or that they would need, a course in chemistry or biology, and they wouldn't successfully pass the course. So we went back and did what we called kind of an academic vertical alignment study in those areas, and saw how teachers were teaching science and math, and then brought together faculty from our 2- and 4-year institutions in those disciplines, and asked them to just meet on Saturday, talk a little bit about the curriculum, talk about their strategies, talk about how they define things, and we saw some areas where, geez, this wasn't all well aligned, and so we worked on some alignment there, and I think the faculty really grew from having the opportunity to discuss with colleagues in their same roles and responsibilities as educators, teaching the same discipline, but at different levels, and then how they were needing to connect with each other in order to facilitate the success of the students.
Yeah. I know some of the Title III and Title V projects I've worked on, for example, with Dallas College, have focused specifically on those issues
Yes.
of how well they're aligned and what that pipeline looks like, and trying to recruit those students to come in, particularly into their STEM programs.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I can only imagine that some of your work led to supporting some of that funding and identifying the areas where they could do some of that, because some of those projects were in the areas of, like you said, biology and
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Yes. Yes.
Well, what kind of things are currently going on with the council? Well, I'll do a follow-up to that in a minute, but what kind of things are you currently, what are your current initiatives? I know you meet, how often do you meet?
We meet quarterly.
Okay.
And then we do have committees, and we ask them to meet in between our quarterly meetings so that they bring back initiatives to the council. A couple of the kind of key areas that we are looking at is that pipeline. We're seeing some leaks in that pipeline, and we're trying to figure out why there's some leaks in that pipeline. We've actually seen a little bit of drop in our high school graduation rates. And that's concerning to, again, keeping that pipeline going, to have an educated citizen and to have a citizen that can earn a livable wage if they're not graduating from high school. Some of this is possibly due to our changing demographics in our region. Some of this is because of the growth in our region, in the economics with the large number of building projects. You mentioned earlier on the street and construction projects and things like that. Oftentimes, I mean, right now, unskilled labor is needed. And so the individuals are able to obtain work and get a job, sometimes without having the high school diploma. So that's one area that we're looking at. Another area that we have been exploring is the reading and writing skills of students. And we have seen a slight decline in those skills from students once they've graduated into our 2-year and 4-year institutions of higher education. Our educators have said, their writing skills are so poor. Some of them are unable to comprehend when they're reading. They're unable to retain the information, and then unable to build on the information. So we're looking at why that might be happening and talking with each other about some of those concerns.
I can only conjecture that some of this could be due to us coming out of COVID as well.
Absolutely.
That there was a lot of disruption in school-related activities during that period.
There is no question, Darrell, and I mean, with things being online, some of our ways of assessing students' learning might have changed a good little bit for us. So we thought the student was able to do that work, but then not able to do it. Also just that level of engagement where students, they hopped on for a little bit, but then maybe they turned off their camera and were doing something else. So we don't know how all of that, but we are definitely thinking that some of the residual from the COVID education process is playing its act now, and we have to deal with that.
Well, you may not have an answer to this question right away, but I do want to pose this, which is, we've got this Office of Research Consulting here at UNT with some fantastic graduate students, doctoral students in research
No doubt.
methods and statistics. We've also got, we're expanding that with Trend to try to reach out to other researchers, like within our college. We've got a lot of assistant professors that are working on very important topics, but their practical utility sometimes with real school settings is sometimes not evident, and they could use more opportunities to work with schools. So how can we, with the Office of Research Consulting and Trends, support what you're doing with this council?
Well, I think, Darrell, we would love to have the relationship, and I think we need to maybe just talk a little bit about a project or two,
Yeah.
define the scope of the work. There's much to do, there's no question, and sometimes I think when we look at these challenging needs in our communities, in our schools, with our students, that we just get a little overwhelmed. But I think if together we can break them down into more bite-sized pieces, that then we can take a look at them, maybe in one school or in one region,
Yeah.
and then see if that's not scalable to other areas. And that is exactly how we've kind of tried to do our work, is it from a scalable standpoint.
Okay, yeah. Let's certainly make a point to have those conversations if we
Okay.
can.
We'd love to.
Yeah, I would too. I sort of see the council as having I see it as having a significant role in supporting students' transition into higher education.
Yes.
So that leads me back to thinking about UNT and what UNT could, in your view, could do to better support students. Are there particular issues or concerns that we need to be thinking about here at UNT in supporting students as they transition?
I think we will need to continue to look at their skills and help them if there are some deficits in their reading and their writing and even some of their math skills, and without sending them all the way back. Sometimes the just-in-time skills might be the thing that they need, whether it's, writing a paper. Well, can we get them some support? And the library does offer some very good support for students. Our writing centers, some of our tutors in math and English, can definitely help along those sorts of ways. The other area that I think we might need to help students in is just in career exploration and actually defining what they want to do. So many students, I think, are kind of overwhelmed with the diversity of careers and the opportunities that then they can't hardly narrow that down so that they get a focus for what they want to do. And we're actually seeing that with more and more students majoring in interdisciplinary studies and applied arts and sciences, degrees, where I think we might need them to get a focus where they could be a little bit better positioned to go into the workforce.
Yeah, I remember from my earlier, before I was holding an academic appointment, I was very involved in a nonprofit for many years that did career and technical education.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the issues we pushed on quite heavily was let's do career awareness and in fact develop career pathways all the way down into high school, where students are learning about careers early on when they can make a change and it doesn't set them back too much, or gets them motivated and more excited to learn the content if it's a STEM area or something like that. That always seems to be, or that always seemed to be a very promising strategy to me, to try to back that down into high schools as much as we could.
And Darrell, that's one of the reasons that we've engaged the workforce partners, is oftentimes it's not just talking about it, it's actually seeing what they do on a day-to-day basis.
They need to practice those skills they're learning in a kind of a work setting if they get a chance.
Yes.
That's good.
We had a project that looked at kind of allied health pathways. And one of the things that was so intriguing about that is some of the individuals said, I did not see any people that looked like me in the profession. But then when we exposed them a little bit more, They just hadn't looked in the right place,
Yeah.
right? And so we went down, we visited many of the allied health professionals at Parkland, and they were like, oh, we had no idea that these were job opportunities.
Mhm.
And then they had no idea what the pathway was and what the salaries were. And that was
Exactly.
when we saw the kind of deer in headlight look, that, hey, this could be something I think I could get interested in.
Yep. One of my best friends here in town is a plumber. And whenever I have him come over to the house, I always try to work with him because I always learn so much when I'm working with him.
Indeed.
And if I could make his kind of salary on top of it,
Exactly.
I might quit being a professor.
Or at
I don't
least do
think I
your
have
own
those
plumbing,
skills.
right?
But I would at least do my own plumbing. Well, I have done my own plumbing. I've sent him photos of it, and he's approved. But I don't know if I could go just anywhere and do the kind of things he does. He's like a magician. The kind
Absolutely.
of things he's got in the way of skills that he can do. But back to the topic at hand. Are there any key partnerships with business or community organizations that have strengthened the impact of the council's work?
Absolutely. We've worked with the telecommunications industries very closely, and I think that work has really enhanced our understanding of kind of more and more the need for students' skills in math and sciences that, sometimes people are saying, oh, they won't need that, they don't need that, they can work in business or they can work in industry or other areas, but we've seen, no, this is going to be something people need to know how to do, and it's going to need to be done over the lifetime to go back to making that educated citizen and that individual that can have a lifelong career. I mean, because we're seeing careers change, and I mean, one of the things that we were actually in a meeting today talking about is the whole thing with AI.
Yeah.
And the future of that and how that's going to touch on the workforce. Our partnership with the Texas Workforce Commission has been very, very helpful, and they have really shifted how they are doing their work. And again, looking more at careers, looking at more working with younger students, not just unemployment that oftentimes many of us knew that entity to be. So, and they're working a great deal with the career and technical programs in our high schools.
The AI is shifting the way all of us do our work.
Absolutely.
It helped me develop the questions for you today. ChatGPT was very helpful.
Helpful. I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
So, Dr. Keller, I'm very curious about how you manage or what motivates you to work when it comes to education and community engagement.
Sure. I really think that we do the work that we do in higher education, in our K through 12 schools, I mean, in order to enrich our communities. And so that's where I think the partnerships make so much sense. And again, this is where oftentimes we give the students the opportunities to do the toe in the water. And I'm going to use education as an example. We had our partner schools for years and years, and they were here in the Denton region and the Denton County area. And so our students could go out in maybe their first or second class and observe and see what teachers did, see what a classroom looked like, see how the students behaved or not, right? And so those sorts of things. And then many would come back and go, no, this isn't for me. And then others would say, this is for me. I know this is what I want to do. I'm passionate about this. And that's what I hope we can do more and more by having those relationships, whether it be in business, whether it be in science fields, whether it be in healthcare, or whether it be in education.
That's truly inspiring, Dr. Keller. Your dedication to education and community engagement is evident in the incredible work you have done through the years. Hearing about your experiences and insights you have given me a new perspective on the role we play as educators, as researchers in making real difference. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know I have learned so much as a new student at UNT that would have been known. if I hadn't had a chance to talk to you today.
I agree. Thanks, Jean.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We
I've
really
enjoyed.
appreciate your time.
Oh, you're
Yes.
more than welcome.
I know it was a difficult thing to try to schedule, but we managed to pull it off finally.
We did.
And I'm super grateful that we did, because I learned a lot about the council and your work and your community work and where you live.
Well, and Darrell, the key I think for us is now let's make us a partnership.
That's right, exactly. If we can do that, I would be all for that.
And then we'll be back and talk about our partnership.
Sounds good.
As
Thank
a
you.
reminder to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who might be finding it valuable. Also give us a like on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in joining our Trend Network, we'll put the link below the podcast video so you can fill out the form. It's completely free to join, and we would love to see you in our next monthly meeting. We hold meetings at different locations throughout the DFW Metroplex, and our next one is going to be at the UNT's Frisco campus on April 16th at 4 p.m. We would love to see you there. I hope you'll join us next time on the Learning Podcast Curve. Until then, take care. We'll be back then with other people with another episode soon. Thank you.
Great job.
Perfect.
Have